Okay. All right. Well, it's my pleasure to call the meeting to order of the Florida Historical Commission on February the 4th, 2022. And Sarah, if you would call the roll, I'd appreciate it.
Judy Benz.
Present.
Steve Bertman.
Attendant.
John Browning.
Present.
Bill Clegg.
Present.
Michael Francis.
Present.
Rick Gonzalez.
Here.
Matt Hudson. Kathleen Kaufman.
Here.
John Phelps.
Here.
Clifford Smith.
Here.
We definitely have quorum.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, and welcome and good morning to commissioners and to staff, Sarah and Catherine. I first want to let us introduce ourselves to whoever is out there and tuning in. I'll start. My name is Judy Benz. I'm an archaeologist out of Pensacola, and I am president and professor emeritus at the University of West Florida. John.
I am staff director of the Senate Rules Committee, formerly director of the Historic Capitol Museum, and formerly clerk of the House for 20 years.
Yes, you were. Cliff, you want to go next?
Yeah, this is Dr. Cliff Smith. I'm senior planner for the city of Sarasota. I'm a member of the National Review Board as well as the Florida Historic Commission.
Rick?
Good morning. My name is Rick Gonzalez. I'm the president of REG Architects in West Palm Beach, past president of the Florida Trust, and on the Historical Commission, on the Federal Advisory Council for Historic Preservation, and since yesterday, the chairman of the National Review Committee. Thanks to Judy.
No, thanks to you, Rick. Thanks to you. Bill?
Good morning, I'm Bill Clegg. I'm the county attorney in Manatee County, and I've had a lifelong interest and involvement in history.
Good. Thank you, Bill. Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Francis. I'm the Huff Family Chair of Florida Studies and Professor of History at the University of South Florida, St. Petersburg campus. Great to be here today.
Thank you. And Steve?
My name is Steve Bertman. I'm the director of the Downtown Improvement Authority for the city of Tallahassee. I will also be doing double duty today, reviewing Afro-American grants. So if I'm quiet, please understand that I'm trying to read through 155 grant proposals.
Oh, Lord, that's too many.
Bless your heart.
Yeah, bless your heart.
Yeah. I know what that means, though. Yeah, I'm from the South. So.
Kathleen.
Good morning. This is Kathleen Kaufman. I am originally from Miami and spent many years as the Historic Preservation Chief for Miami-Dade County. I'm currently the Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Gainesville. I also sit on the National Register Review Committee, and I'm a new director for CAMP, which is Council of America's Military Past.
Oh, good. Well, that's your council members. And Sarah, why don't you have the staff introduce themselves, including yourself?
Okay, I'm Sarah Alico, the program administrator for the division handling miscellaneous things. And then we have Tim and Angie here in the room, so I'll let them speak.
Hi, good morning. Angie Tomlinson, assistant director and operations manager and grants maven, and I feel your urgency, Steve, to get those applications reviewed for the African American.
I'm Tim Parsons. I know all of you. It's a pleasure to be here and be in this meeting with you all. I'm the division director and the state historic preservation officer and the herder of the cats, both in my professional and personal lives.
And then I believe we have some other stuff on Zoom. I know Katie is there.
Yes, I'm Katie Miar. I'm the state archaeologist and the bureau chief of the Bureau of Archaeological Research.
And then I think Alyssa isn't able to join us today, but I'm not sure. And then Michael Hart is online. And I'm not sure if there's anyone else.
Okay, thank you, Sarah.
I did not introduce myself, I guess.
Well, John, I'm so sorry.
All right, it's no problem. I'm John Browning. I'm the Political Affairs Director for the Goodman Company out of West Palm Beach, and I'm also the Commissioner of Transportation for Florida.
Good. Thank you. I apologize, John. I was just
It's
going
good. I don't
around
care.
the screen. Yeah. No. Okay. The next order of business is that we need to vote on this is to adopt the agenda. I'm sure you all received it. I hope you've glanced over it. And I guess I should ask you, are there any addition or corrections to the agenda today? Seeing that there are none, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Judy, before we do that, may I make just a point about the minutes? They're awfully light on detail with respect to the reports made by the various staff. And I'm afraid without a little more in there, we're going to lose track of what we actually did and what we actually learned at those meetings. So I would suggest, if we can, and without putting a burden on anyone, just fill in a little bit more detail on those segments of committee reports that we received in the minutes.
Sarah, can you make that happen?
Sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Otherwise,
Thanks, John.
I'll move the minutes. Having said that,
Is there a second?
This is Michael Francis. I'll second that.
Thank you. Any comments or discussion? All right, all in favor of adopting the agenda as presented to us, please say aye, or somehow just say
Aye.
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 Thank you. All right. Now the next is the adoption of the minutes, John Phelps, and
Okay.
approval of the minutes. And I guess what we should do is, well, you've already, I don't know how to handle this. I guess we could just approve them, and then Sarah will make sure that the minutes are more detailed in the future, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay, so all in favor
Thank
of
you.
approving the minutes from our November 5 meeting, please say
Aye.
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 All opposed? Good. Now, before we really vote, Rick, did you have something to say?
No, I'm fine. I was just saying aye.
Oh, I see. You're raising your hand like, you should do in Zoom. All right, good. Thank you. They are approved. And let me make a note here. Expand reports. Okay. Now, my comments. I think the most important thing that we as a commission have done is step up our request for support of our special category grants. Tim will tell you next more details, but let me tell you that the Senate has fully funded the entire list of special category grants. As I look over the spreadsheet that Melinda Horton put out, we have, last year there was no funding but in 2021, there was no funding. In 19 and 20, there was 5 million. It was 2 million in 18, 19. It has been, as far as we go back, it's 15, 16. We haven't had the full list funded. So I think that our collective voices have been heard. I think the secretary has done her work at the executive level. I hope that the House will come around. If you'll notice, there's something in almost every line of the Department of State's budget, and I think that's really a good sign. There's plenty of one-time money. We know that. There are billions. And I think we're finally going to get our share of it. And I think we have raised the awareness of our legislators and by forming the State Historic Preservation Coalition. That also has brought attention to all of our sister organizations to speak to their legislators and ring the bell louder. So for me, that is a big step forward. I think we're firmly on first base. We have 3 more bases to go, but we are certainly starting out the legislative budget process with 1 foot in the door. Other than that, that's really the most important thing right now. And I really appreciate all of you helping. Kathleen has been especially helpful. And I am really grateful to all of you for agreeing that this is our primary responsibility, special category grants. Somewhere along the line in the last week or two, I looked at our mission on the website, and the first sentence mentions special category grants. And I think that it's a really good, responsible thing that we are doing. Win or lose, we are doing our job. And I think the secretary is really a great partner to have. So we will continue to move forward. Any comments on this?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
I would say I am also hopeful, but I've also seen where, especially the House at 1 year fully funded all the grants at this point of time in the budget process. And really that was a place to put money for the sprinkle list. So yes, it is funded right now, but it was used as a tool to hide money for later expenditures when the budget negotiations became much more intense. So, I say, let's go forward and do good work, but let's also be aware that things can change really quickly.
I know they can. I know. Thank you, Steve. Yes.
Judy,
John?
just a little bit of a question, I suppose. Where is the House at this point? Do we know any more about their position?
No, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't. John? Brownie?
No, I'm not sure.
Oh dear. Yeah. John, you're breaking up.
I think it's in the budget, and we just got to, I'm sorry, I think we've got to pay close attention to the next few weeks, if you can hear me.
Yes, we got you now.
We can. Next week, the budget committees are the big budget committees are meeting, and we'll know a lot more when that takes place.
Hey, John, the spreadsheets that, I'm looking for the spreadsheets. They haven't been popped out, correct? As far as you know?
Me, the Senate subcommittees have.
Yeah, I know. I saw that, but
I think
from
the
a
House
House
has.
perspective, they haven't been out yet.
Haven't seen
correct.
anything. That's why I asked.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that I was looking too, and I hadn't seen anything. And I just want to make sure you were a little closer on some of that. So I was hoping that maybe you had better intel.
Not at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Right. I think that it's past time to work the House ITA subcommittee. But I think, like both John Phelps and John Browning said, we need to monitor them closely with our folks. I think Melinda Horton is probably really tuned in more. She's part of the coalition and is keeping us informed, and she'll know what's happening. I asked her, should we focus any more on the House ITA subcommittee? She said, no, not now. That is moved past that. And but I'm working my networks, and I know that you all are too. So if anybody sees anything worrisome, let me know, or just email me, and I'll pass it down through the coalition and see if there's anybody that we can do. Kathleen right now is looking at the representatives and senators who are, what district they're in that are on the appropriate committees. And we're going to set out the alert to the right organizations and the right people that live in their counties, the leaders' counties. So we'll see. I will say
Yes,
that
I
the
think-
trust put together what do you call it? A book that used to be the pink book. It's now yellow. And they lobbied hard on last Thursday was their lobbying day. And they had a good reception at the trust headquarters Thursday night. And there were several representatives and senators there. So that's a real good sign. That's what we need. Just keep the bell ringing.
I'll contact Jay Trumbull. He's a good friend he's the head of appropriations for the House. We'll see if we can put another shove there.
That's good. That's good. Thank you, John.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and Judy, just as a point of information, the General Appropriations Committee, I think in the House and the Senate are meeting on Wednesday of next week. So it's not too late to start talking. I mean, we need to get in there quickly.
Okay.
The amendment deadlines for after the bills will probably be coming out soon. And the amendment deadlines are also in place. So bear that in mind when you're contacting folks.
Good. Good.
The deadline's on the amendments. What are they?
For the main committee, the deadlines will be for main amendments Monday in the Senate. I can't speak to the House because I didn't hear their motion. In the Senate, they're 1:30 on Monday for main amendments and 1:30 on Tuesday for what we call adhering amendments, which are substitutes or amendments to amendments.
Okay.
Hey, John, quick question.
Mhm.
Is the Senate process still as if you propose an amendment, you have to take the corresponding money out from somewhere to find it?
It has to be from the same subcommittee.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that applies in the House too by rule now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I believe so too. I just want to make
It's
sure
a
everyone.
policy. It's a policy in the Senate. Yeah.
Right. I just want to make sure everyone understands that, usually those things are locked in because taking someone's money, for your money,
Right.
gets a reaction from whoever's money you are being taken. So it's
Right.
difficult to change it unless you have, blessings from God.
Yeah.
And that's at least a, appropriation sub-chair or chair or leadership. And you know that.
Mhm. Okay, so we should, as individuals, work our appropriation committee folks. Thank you, John Browning, for offering to contact Jay Trumbull. That's important too. And our state representative, our senator is Senator Broxson over here in District 1. And he is the incoming next year chair of Senate Appropes. And I know that he understands the situation for special category grants and will do what he can. I'll recontact him next week. He's a strong supporter of it. And
Interested in history too.
yes, he does. And the Williamson, who is the representative from the District 2, just to our west, east, there's no west in Florida, to our east, he is the chair of the House ITA subcommittee. And he, of course, is on the Appropriations Committee, and I'll reach out to him next week too. Good. Thanks for that heads up, John Phelps.
What is, for those who are regularly doing this and may know, what is the most effective way without being able to physically go to Tallahassee and just knowing the sheer volume of emails that they might get? Is phone call, trying to get in to talk to them by phone, the best way to talk to these people? Phone call and follow up with an email? What?
I would say a phone call, even if you can't get through to the senator or House member involved, because they're very busy right now, at least speak to their assistant. Their district assistants will pass on messages, and those kind of personal contacts, I think, are much better than just a straight up email.
Right. Right. Good. So would you call their office in, should our people, including ourselves, call the office in Tallahassee or the home office in their district?
At this point in the session, Tallahassee, because the
Right.
district staff are up here now.
Right.
They're all up there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. That's good advice. So look at the Appropriations Committee members, see who you know, and reach out. Anyway,
Judy,
that's my report. That's what
Judy,
we've been doing.
would you say, just as a question for me,
Sure.
since the Senate has the full budget in there, perhaps the focus should be on the House at this
Right.
point. It doesn't hurt to follow up, go back around and thank the Senate, of course.
Right.
But
We
but
put
I think
out
focus at this
a,
in the House.
and with the coalition, I have put out a request to thank the right people in the Senate, and Kathleen is making sure that their contact numbers on the Appropriations Committee, as not that, the TED Committee, and the President and President Designate of the Senate are thanked for their support.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Kathleen, for doing that.
Of course.
Okay. All right. So that is my report and comments. And Tim, why don't you give us your director's report now?
Sure. Thank you, Judy. I'd be happy to. First, as always, thanks everybody for being here. We really appreciate the time and effort that that y'all put into this and taking some time out of your Friday. Well, the big and most obvious thing to talk about is the budget, and as everyone kind of mentioned, we're all heartened by the news from the House and the Senate that's come out so far from the TED committees. I was talking to our legislative affairs staff a little bit yesterday and the day before, and the Department of State overall in all of our divisions has accomplished some, I shouldn't say accomplished some goals, but kind of, preliminarily, it looks like we may be funded for things that we've been trying to do for a number of years, and DHR is no exception. And I really do commend the Historical Commission and the Florida Trust and everybody from the other organizations that are part of the coalition. I think that's undoubtedly played a big role in this, and you combine that with the fact that there's a lot of one-time money that's coming in from Washington, and that there is a state higher than expected revenues, and it's a good environment for that kind of lobbying to make this sort of thing happen. So in DHR's world, in addition, as y'all know and as Judy discussed, the Senate, this is all very early on, of course, and with special category grants, the caveat is always things can change between meetings and between spreadsheets, and it happens all the time. So we'll just wait and see. But the Senate so far has proposed, coming out of the Senate, full funding at about $23.7 million. Nothing from the House and the House ITA subcommittee, but we'll keep our fingers crossed there. Will it stay $23.7 million? My heart of hearts says probably not, that it would be likely that there'd be a decrease there, and it may just depend. There are many of you on the commission that know a lot more about the strategy and how the legislature works than I do, but just the limited experience I have suggests that if the House comes out with maybe a lower number, maybe they'll meet somewhere in the middle, but we'll just have to see. In other exciting this is a strange thing to be excited about, but in other exciting news, and these are less likely to change over the course of the rest of the session, the Bureau of Archaeological Research is finally going to be able to get vehicles and a new research vessel. That made it into both the ITA subcommittee and the Senate TED subcommittee. And I know most of y'all know this, but of course our newest boat is about 20-something years old, and our best vehicle, we have two, I guess, what you could consider best vehicles. One is a big old diesel pickup that since we acquired it as surplus from FWC, I think we put about $20,000 or $25,000 of repairs into it just to keep it running. It's got about 1 million miles on it. And the other one, I think, is a 1994 Chevy Suburban. That's got a bazillion miles on it, way over 100,000. It needs a transmission replaced, which I think we were probably going to do this year, but now we may not have to, because as of July 1, assuming that nothing drastic happens, after many, many years of trying every single year, BAR will be getting new vehicles and new vessels, which is wonderful, because it has hurt the mission of the organization to have those unreliable vehicles. There have been years where they've been in the shop more than they've been on the road helping archaeologists do their jobs. So I know it sounds like a strange thing to get excited about, because there are agencies like FWC that have, big pots of money every single year to buy new vehicles, but that's not true for us. And so, we really have to make do with what we've got. So I'm really tremendously excited about that, as strange as that sounds. Also tremendously exciting is that the new archaeological collections facility that we've been proposing for a number of years, that got funded a couple years ago, that was then vetoed because of COVID budget concerns, that is also included in both of the subcommittee's recommendations. So fingers crossed that that funding will persist. So a lot of good things happening so far in DHR in these early stages of the budget negotiations, and I'm really hopeful. So far, it's been very favorable. There's a lot of this one-time Washington money coming in, so they've got the legislature has some money to spread around, and I feel pretty good about our position so far. So we'll all keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Too early to know for sure, but certainly looking very good. There are some other bills that we're watching. One, of course, is and as some of y'all participated in, we're watching House Bill 1215, which has a Senate companion, 1588. That's a bill that has to do with abandoned and historic cemeteries, and the real meat of that bill comes out of the recommendations that were put together by the Task Force on Abandoned African American Cemeteries, which I chaired and which DHR and the Department of State kind of administered over the last 6 or 8 months. And that was a very enjoyable process, and it was wonderful working with some amazing professionals around the state, and there was a lot of insightful and thoughtful discussion, and it generated a report that contains the recommendations of the task force members that the legislature took to heart, and we're really excited about it, primarily because if the bill becomes law in the form that it's in now, we would basically, DHR would be tasked with creating an Office of Historic Cemeteries. The primary purpose of the Office of Historic Cemeteries would be to essentially inventory, study African American cemeteries and other cemeteries that are over 50 years old, that are undocumented and, quote unquote, abandoned, neglected, stolen, et cetera. And make sure that they're appropriately documented and memorialized, in addition to serving as a liaison between government agencies and members of the public and local municipalities to ensure that these kinds of cemeteries are recognized, maintained, and that, as required by state law, access and easements is provided for descendants. As it's written right now, that would include 3 new positions. We would absolutely have to have new positions for this kind of organization, or for this kind of office, because it's as many of y'all know, there are thousands and thousands of undocumented cemeteries in Florida, and it is a lifetime task to try and document all of these cemeteries. Which, it's a lofty goal, but the goal would be to find all of them, because why not? If we have the people and we have the office to do it, then that would be the idea. That's the primary one that I've been keeping my eye on, as well as Senate Bill 1310, which is the Florida Main Street Program and Historic Preservation Tax Credits proposal. The most exciting thing about this bill is that it would create a historic preservation tax credit that essentially would provide a tax credit. Excuse me. It would provide a tax credit for property owners who have also received the federal historic preservation tax credit. So the idea is that it would be relatively seamless. Alyssa Lotane has been our main agency contact for this. It is not an agency bill. This is something that the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation and I believe some lobbyists that they've been working with have really worked hard and pushed with coordination and cooperation from the National Trust for Historic Preservation. But Alyssa, of course, as our tax credit expert, has had a hand in helping them and guiding them with some of the language. So unfortunately, she can't be here, a little bit unexpectedly to give you all of the details, but it would largely reflect what exists in 30-some other states where you would have a state tax credit that would piggyback on the federal tax credit, which would provide an incentive for more people to participate, which one is an economic driver, and two, helps us continue to push forward our historic preservation goals, particularly in these Main Street communities, CLGs, and other downtown areas where there's a tremendous amount of development pressure, and a lot of times, as you all know, the first target are, the quote, old, unwanted, unused buildings. This is really where that's targeted, and so we have high hopes for that. So far, the Senate bill has passed the Commerce and Tourism Committee favorably, as well as the Tax and Finance Committee. They were both unanimous votes. It has not generated a whole lot of controversy, but there has been a little bit of discussion, which is good. The House bill has had a first reading, but so far it hasn't moved in committee. So we've got our fingers crossed for that as well. And really for this year, those along with the state budget are the two main bills that we're watching as the Division of Historical Resources. In other great news related to money, we've been able to undertake a great number of deferred maintenance projects because of some of these federal dollars that have rolled in from Washington. And as a result, a couple of the projects that I'm very excited about, just to provide kind of this is just two of the several projects that the Department of State are involved in and administering. But as some of you and I have talked about before, the Council House roof out of Mission San Luis, which of course is the reconstruction of the Appalachie Council House and is made of, big giant posts and thatch. We had to remove all of the thatch because it was rotting. It has a lifespan. It's an organic material, and we didn't have funding to replace it. Well, thankfully, through this deferred maintenance appropriation, we now have that money, and that project is moving forward. And so the initial meetings on that, the project is going to be run by the Department of Management Services, which a lot of these larger projects that we are a part of are because they have the expertise to do that. The meetings have already started to get that done. So we're, ultimately what this is allowing us to do is complete a project that we thought maybe we'd be able to get to with a lot of effort, planning, et cetera, within the next 3 to 5 years. And now we're doing it this year. So that's fantastic. Additionally, if you're familiar with the location of our Bureau of Archaeological Research over at the Governor Martin House, a second structure in addition to the Governor Martin House that's on that property is what we refer to as the Carriage House. And our staff over there has done a great job over the years because they're very handy people, because as we all know, archaeologists are kind of like MacGyvers in their own right in getting this property kind of back up to snuff. FPAN worked there for a long time, but the building had just continued to deteriorate, and there was never funding to really keep it up. So we're really happy that all of our archaeologists pitched in, did a lot of interior work, turned it into a fine archaeology lab, and now also because of these dollars related to COVID relief, we're undertaking some of the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act projects there and in other historic houses that the division and the department oversee, and a lot of the exterior work and wood rot that needed to get done to make sure that that house is in good shape for the next 10 or 15 years. So a lot of good news, really. The only kind of negative bad news I have to report is the same that a lot of organizations are going through, both in government and the private sector, and that's just like everywhere else in the universe since the start of the pandemic. We've had a tremendous amount of turnover, and we've struggled to fill positions. And I think that this is something that a lot of organizations are experiencing, and we're just doing our best to fill those roles. And we've been pretty successful in filling a number of them. I think people are finally starting to get back into the swing of things. But I'm glad that some of those positions that have stayed open for a while that we've struggled to fill, particularly in the Bureau of Historic Preservation and Compliance and Review, for example, we're starting to get those filled. So that's an overview of most of the big things that are going on with the division right now. I think most of us are really pleased with where we are. There's a lot of exciting stuff going on, particularly regarding the COVID relief money, as well as what we're looking at potentially for the next fiscal year's budget. They're going to keep us all very, very busy for the next 18 months or so. So that concludes what I've prepared for my report, but I'm happy to answer any questions that the commissioners may have.
Tim, I have one question.
Yes, sir.
From a city of Tallahassee perspective, we've been working on a number of projects, and we've started to run into, that is a great cat picture, by the way.
I'm really sorry.
Uh,
I'm sorry.
We've run into, supply chain issues. There is a certain amount of chaos in the construction industry. Large projects are far more expensive than they were when they originally were budgeted and started to get off the ground. So I'm curious if the grant funding is good this year, is there going to be is there any appetite or thought about trying to extend the time length of the grant process because of this conundrum that we're having with supply chain issues, inflation, and just literal chaos? I don't know if you guys have started to experience yet, but I was just curious if you guys have started to think like that.
Sure. So, we've experienced a little bit of that, with the work that got completed at the Miami Circle a few months ago, and pretty much every project is having some kind of delay owing to supply chain issues or labor, labor issues or something like that. For the grants, the good news about those is that, particularly with the special category grants, which are fixed capital outlay, that those grants can be extended for up to almost indefinitely, really.
Okay.
Yeah, we've had grants extended like 5 years.
5-6 years. So there is a lot of flexibility there, and while there's not a whole lot we can do in terms of what was appropriated, obviously there is the ability to be pretty flexible in adjusting budgets within the appropriations parameters, as well as amending the contract so that it persists for a longer period of time. So definitely.
I think the key with the open grant projects is when you run into issues like that, stay in contact with your division staff, grant manager, let them know what's going on. And as long as we get notified in enough time, we can usually always extend a project another 3 to 6 months as needed, based on the construction or budget changes. But it really is key to keep in contact with the grant manager.
Well, that's good to know. Thank you very much. I was curious. I knew we had some flexibility, but I didn't know if we could extend it out multiple different years. I know you guys have made a commitment to try to close some of these out as we've gone through this period.
Yeah, well, that is correct. We do don't want, it's never a preference to have a grant project extend multiple years, but with circumstances, being what they are, that can happen. We do like to see progress being made on a project. So if you're asking for extension after extension and you haven't done anything, any actual work, physical work, that can raise questions. But largely, we extend most special category grants past 2 years because permitting takes a long time. Then you get into the construction and you find things that you didn't expect, and you have to adjust budgets and scopes. So that's pretty common. I will say with small matching grants, those are, because those are not fixed capital outlay, they do have to be extended in the state fiscal year. So they can't be extended beyond the certified forward period.
Well, thank you very much, Angie. I just hope that you guys have the bandwidth to do let's hope all of the grants get funded in special category, but with also all the Afro-American grants too. That's going to be a big workload for a lot of people.
Yes, we we agree, and we really have some bandwidth concerns, I will say, if all of these get funded, and we don't, with the African American program, we did receive a lot of applications, and that's going to be another. I mean, I was going to speak to this program during my update, but I'll just mention, we share responsibility for the African American Cultural Historical Grant Program with the Division of Arts and Culture. So some of those projects will go to them, but a lot of them are historical type projects. So, and we just don't know how they'll rank and which ones will get funded. So, we share those concerns.
I was just kind of thinking, man, I mean, just the number of grants for construction on various places across the state, for the Afro-American grants would be a job in itself. And then you add the others, could be interesting. So I'm glad you appreciate that. And then I'll just be quiet. I just want to make sure you guys were thinking about it.
We did submit an LBR for a additional grant staff member, but I don't believe that made it in the governor's budget. So it doesn't seem like that will move forward. But.
Madam Chair, I have a question. This is Kathleen. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Tim, for that very optimistic update. And I just wanted to circle back to something we had spoken about at our previous meeting, what you said about having trouble filling the positions just made me think of it. We talked about the state architect position and how you've been having a very hard time filling that. And mostly because those of us who know that industry know that pay scale just wasn't pulling any applicants in for you. And I believe we were going to try to help promote your absolute need for someone in that position that actually had a lot of experience and worked with historic buildings and reading historic building plans. So has anything happened with that? Is there anything we can do to keep pressure on that particular issue?
Well, the real issue is, I hate to sound glib, but it's one of money. And so, of course, the salary range for most positions that we pay at the state, there's a range, and you can't go above it and you can't go below it. And so we've kind of topped out what we can advertise that at, given the constraints that we have with other staff salaries, with the category, how positions are categorized with DMS and so on. We did look into, and I had a couple of discussions with various people in the department about what it might take to do a staff augmentation to bring in outside contractors to do that work. And we don't have that much money, quite frankly. It would be a loss, a considerable amount. And we just don't have the resources to throw at it. So Alyssa and I have kind of strategized on how to approach this. We don't have a great solution. I think our solution is probably going to be, now that we've gotten some other positions filled in the Bureau of Historic Preservation that we really needed to act on, is to try and advertise it again and take a real close look at qualifications, requirements, et cetera, and see what we can do. I will say one real positive development that has happened recently is that we were able to hire a new PhD level architectural historian, who I know was not an architect. I completely understand that, but that's a huge benefit to us and puts us in a much better position than we were, a couple of months ago. But you're right, Kathleen. That's a problem, and the fact of the matter is that there's X range that we can hire that position at. There's not a whole lot of flexibility within the structure that we have, and looking outside for an outside architect through an external contract is pretty prohibitively costly, unfortunately. So it's an unresolved problem, but we're still trying.
What about, Tim? What if you offered it as a part-time job? Because, the state pays so poorly. half of what the private sector pays. Maybe you can get someone that's either semi-retired or part-time, because we're going on what, 3 years without an architect, or 2 years without an architect?
A little less than 2.
Yeah, this is pretty bad.
Well, I know about the pay range and that you can't go over it and that it's a problem for you guys. I know that. I think if someone were to say, okay, Division of Historical Resources, we see that you're clearly behind on the times as far as pay scale, let us help you out. Who would that be? And would us contacting them be of any help to you?
Well, I mean, the legislature gives us our appropriation, and so that's one issue. We already start every single year in the red when it comes to our salary appropriation. Not to get too in the weeds, but even at where we are not fully funded in terms of salaries from the legislature, which is why when we have vacancies, we do have to hold positions open to make up that salary deficit. And that's been happening since forever, at least as long as I've been division director, and for many, many years before that. The second thing there is that, our agency doesn't have any control over those classifications. That's the Department of Management Services, and that applies to the entirety of state government. So to be honest with you, I don't know how they develop those. I know they were last updated and changed. I think it was probably back in 2004, 2005. And of course, the pay grades get adjusted whenever the legislature provides additional funding for salaries, or when the legislature provides an across-the-board pay increase. So at an agency level, as far as the Department of State goes, there's really nothing to do. To be quite honest with you, it's a bigger statewide issue.
Tim, something has crossed my mind, if I can jump in a little bit. Have you thought about internships? Basically post-graduation or near graduation students, giving them experience. Does the University of Florida still have their historic architecture or historic preservation program that intertwines it with architecture? But interns are often a good way to give them experience and to give you their services.
That program does exist, and actually what I've kind of learned over the years, the last few years, is that we don't usually have problems pulling in young professionals. So young architectural historians, people with a few years of experience, or fresh out of grad school. So we don't even have to bring in those folks as interns. We can actually hire them as staff and give them professional experience. Where the rubber really meets the road on this particular issue is the requirement of the architect being licensed. And so an intern wouldn't necessarily solve that issue. And like I said, we have been successful, although like everywhere, the last year and a half or so, hiring's been a struggle, but we brought in some great young architectural historians and archaeologists and historians for that matter. And so our model for many years has kind of been identify that talent, people coming out of SCAD, people coming out of UF, sometimes Florida State. UGA has a great program, and we get them. They're here for, a few years, and then sometimes they move on, and sometimes they move up in our agency. And that's been great for most positions, although I certainly wish some people would stay forever. But the challenge is that, it's pretty easy to get SOI qualified, Secretary of the Interior Standards qualified, relatively early in one's professional career if you're an archaeologist with a postgraduate degree, or an architectural historian or a historian. However, an actual licensure from the state of Florida for a professional architect, once you start requiring licenses, as Rick has pointed out before, the private sector and the salaries that they offer, even for interns, exceed a lot of times what the state can offer in terms of professional positions. And so that's just been my experience. I'm not saying that's the end all be all of the experience in hiring folks. I've I've only had this job for 6 years. And so there are people out there that are way more qualified than me, but that's the experience that I've had.
Oh, I get it. So it's the state licensing problem, and it was just an idea. You've got your finger
Great
on the
idea.
pulse. Yeah. Rick, you agree?
Well, Judy, you just can't have an intern doing this kind of work. This is all about life safety and healthware. And that's why you have to have our practice requires a licensed professional, not an intern, not a graduate that's fresh out of school, doesn't know what they're looking at. And the next thing we have is a building collapsing because we had a young person with zero experience reviewing a project. So I'm really...
I will say, I hate to interrupt, Rick, but we don't review for any life safety. That's not something that we are actually allowed to do. That's all code and permitting and stuff. But yes, I just wanted to make sure that I got that out.
Yeah, sure. And I understand that. But as a professional, when you're reviewing the other stuff, if you notice something that's odd, you can make a comment. You're not going to let it pass through, and then the thing falls down, and you're like, well, it's not part of my scope of work, So that's a two-way comment. I'm just thoroughly frustrated that here we go, starting year number 3 without a licensed architect in our department, and we need to contact DMS or the governor's office or somebody to help fix this situation, because you're going to get slammed with grants. Now you've got the African-American ones, which we've got 2 weeks to review, 150, and you've got all these other ones that are hopefully going to get funded. And there's just going to be a ton of work. I mean, in fact, in the old days, you used to have 2 architects, and now we have 0.
Well, it sounds like maybe that's something we need to focus on a little bit, Rick. The coalition might be able to help. We might be able to help once we get through this budget and the legislature. We could put that on our radar. We're the kind of keepers of the historical preservation world in a way. And if this is a big concern, we ought to jump on it and say, this is the problem. We don't want a building to fall down. We can't find anybody. And now we've got all this grant money. I think that's pretty good leverage.
Yes, Judy.
And real quick, just a final thought from me on that is, I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of school or complaining, because I don't mean to do that at all. But this is really a wider indicator of state salaries in general. And I don't want to sound critical of my agency or anything like that, but this is not an issue even in the Department of State or DHR that is just limited to architects. Yes, this one requires a professional license, and so there's a certain advantage to, I shouldn't call it advantage. Basically, the private sector just pays more because of that licensure requirement, and so there is a little bit of a unique issue there, and so it brings it to the forefront because that salary in the private sector is so much higher than archaeologists or architectural historians. But the truth is, and again, this is something that is unusual for me to say in a public meeting, so I'm kind of going out on a limb, but if you were to look at the salaries in DHR across the board, you would probably be very shocked at where they are for most of the positions. And so the broader issue is not just one, because remember, I've got to think about more than just the architect, right? I've got an entire division of over 100 employees that are all drawing from the same pot of money. And we have archaeologists and architectural historians and historians that are just as qualified or more qualified in their fields than any architect that we've ever had on staff. And so I can't, rob Peter to pay Paul, so to speak, because then I just have a hole somewhere else. And so really, this is just an indication of a broader issue that Angie and I and the bureau chiefs here at DHR struggle with every single day when we go through the hiring process. And, this all happens, kind of in the background, but for most positions right now, we're making anywhere between 2 and 5 offers before someone accepts. And the reason 1, 2, and 3 why is because of the salary offer. So again, please don't think this is complaining. I don't want anybody to go to the governor's office and say, oh, Director Tim Parsons is complaining about state salaries. That's not it. What I'm really saying is there is actually an issue with talent cultivation that owes across the board, not just with architects or even within my division or within the department, probably across state government, with the salary ranges. And we've literally had people in the last 3 months move across the country to take new jobs. move to unpleasant climates as opposed to Florida to take new jobs. And that's why. That's the reason. So, you know, I understand the urgency and the importance of having an architect position, but I look across the board and see this being a much bigger problem across the Bureau of Historical Museums, Archaeological Research, Historic Preservation, our colleagues over in the state archives. In the next 5 years, we're going to have other positions like this, and it's not going to be limited to just the architects.
So Tim, quick question. Do you have staff in each one of those other departments that you just mentioned?
I'm
Right.
sorry, which, do you mean the other program areas in DHR?
Yeah, historians, archaeologists. Do you have people in all of those other departments, areas of work? You do, right? Yes.
Well, we have some, yeah, but we've got
Yes.
positions that we're struggling to fill or that have gone unfilled for the same reason.
Yeah, but my point is that you have people working in all those areas. You have 0 architects right now, and you've had 0 architects for 2 years.
Well, that's right.
It's a big problem in architecture. It's a problem everywhere, but it's a big problem when you have 0 staff. You know, one of the things, I've been doing this for over 35 years, and one of the things about working with the state of Florida was that there was always technical advice, technical experience in Tallahassee to help architects and people with projects around the state, especially small towns from North Florida that don't even have you know, a single staff person. And we haven't been able to fill a very important requirement, I think, you know, which is to offer technical advice, review projects, make sure they're being done aesthetically and historically correctly. There's no advice, you know, so I think this is a very, very serious problem. It's not this, I know you have problems in all your other areas, but this one kind of rises to the top.
Well, I think it's kind of, I don't mean to sound argumentative, but I don't think it's true that we offer no advice. You know, I think we fill a pretty important role across the state, and we give a lot of good advice and a lot of valuable advice to hundreds of people every year. But you know, I do understand where you're coming from, but you know, you are preaching to the choir. We definitely get it, and you know, we work the best we can with the resources that we have, and the most important resource that we have at our disposal is salary money.
And we know that's very, very, very poor right now. There's just no way you're going to get anybody. We're at a catch-22 here, Judy.
I've been thinking, you know, we do have a little bit of, we need to strategize on this after the budget is over. You know, what are our pressure points? What leverage do we have? What kind of a cry can we make? Can the architectural, see, the one thing is most of our historic preservation grants are about involved buildings. I don't know what percentage archaeology is, but it's low. It's always low. Out of the 77 grant applications we had last year for a special category that are on the table now, I think 3 or 4 max were archaeological, and it's always been that way. So that means that you have more grant pressure for a historic architect, and that burdens Tim's staff. Now, there are a lot of people, you know, that might be a point of leverage down the road. You know, there are a lot of people that can raise a lot of sand about that because it would put their grants in jeopardy, both current and future. If you have the bottleneck there at the division, and you know, that our job is to help DHR, and perhaps we can, with, of course, Tim and the secretary's blessing, find additional pressure points that might help relieve this special bottleneck.
Okay.
Yep. So let's start. I think our next meeting is in May, and we'll have the budget all ironed out by then. And as a commission, we can decide, do we want to focus on that? A coalition, I'm sure would take it up. And, you know, these grants affect all sectors in historic preservation, archaeology, anthropology, history, and historic preservation. So that might be something to focus on in between legislative sessions.
If we could add that to the agenda for May, that would be wonderful.
Yes, let's do that. So I'll say, let me make a note, add to agenda. May. Okay, Sarah, I know you've got that too. All right. Now, are we ready to move on?
Can I just say one thing about that, Judy?
Of course, John,
Same
yes.
topic. I'm not an expert in the salary side of things in the legislature, but I do know that the governor's budget for next year is being developed now. Okay, not the budget we're working on and refining now in the legislature, but the
Right.
departments are already in the cycle of developing their budgets for submission to the governor next fall. Okay, so there's more urgency to this than there may be obvious.
I see.
And also just a related point, I know that when there are crises in state government, sometimes the legislature gets involved in helping set salaries on a broad scale. I know we did this for the corrections folks, or we're working on that this year. And so I think if we focus our efforts on getting the DMS people to look at this first, it would get us a long way down the right path. Okay. Just a different perspective on that question.
Yes. Well, it might be something, Tim, you and I ought to talk over with the secretary to see if how she would be and feel on pursuing this and getting in, sort of developing a strategy to get in line in the governor's budget for next year for an increase in salaries. I don't know for a department, but certainly we do have a crisis with all of these new grants, the African American cemeteries and so on. That your staff is going to be a bottleneck, and we don't want them to be troubled by potential applicants for the new money that you're holding it up and you have a problem, and maybe we can approach it that way. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good discussion. I mean, it's honestly the discussion of DMS pay grades and pay bands and how that is dealt with at the agency level, based on the amount of rate, the amount of available cash, the amount of authority, all of which are three different things, and how that all ends up becoming individual salaries. That's a discussion that could take an entire day.
Right.
So, I didn't even get into, what the actual pay ranges are, which are usually wider than most agencies actually have the ability to pay. So, I kind of hinted at it because the real issue is just what funds are appropriated at the agency level, and what the rate is in terms of what's developed for salaries by the legislature. That's really where the rubber meets the road. So it gets pretty darn nuanced, but it would certainly not be a hurtful discussion. I think it'd be, who knows? Secretary Lee has some great ideas. So, she may be able to point you in the right direction.
Right, and I can bring it to our attention just as out of concern, the commission is concerned, and we're looking at options, and could she find a way to give us advice or something like that? Good, Tim. I'll get with you offline, and we'll have another meeting with the secretary at her earliest convenience. Thanks for the heads up, John Phelps.
And for those fellow commissioners who don't know, I mean, the Division of Historical Resources, they do an incredible amount of work. And I completely hear you, Tim, that it's everybody's salary, and I'm all for pushing for everybody's salary to be more in line with what it should be. But for those fellow commissioners that don't know, it's not just the grant projects that the renovation and rehabilitation drawings and architectural drawings are being reviewed. It's every single tax credit project that is being applied for. So that federal tax credit project, their first step is that you have to send it to the state. You have to send it to DHR, your plans for rehabilitation. And so, those plans are having to be reviewed on the level of, what is the federal government going to accept? Is this something we can move on to the federal government, or is it something we kick back to the applicant? So there's
I didn't know
lots.
that. That's even better.
And like Rick Gonzalez said, the state in the past has always been just a wonderful, wonderful resource for those communities who don't necessarily have a lot of professional staff in their own realm, and you were always able to call Phil Wisely and Walt Martyr and Dave Farrow and all those guys, and they were so willing to help out whenever they could, just to help you have a better product and to make sure that the historic building really was rehabilitated the right way. So the loss of those gentlemen is just a huge hole, but I understand it's everybody, Tim. I get it. And if I could, be Oprah and say, you get a raise and you get a raise and you get a raise, I certainly would. I definitely would.
Good. I didn't know that about tax credits projects, that they also had to, it makes sense, to be reviewed. And now with this new bill on the state tax credit for historic renovations, that adds even more fuel to this fire.
And real quickly, I want to point out that, we are not unable to review tax credits or even grants because of the lack of an architect. With tax credits, we don't have to get too into the weeds, but, our primary role is to assess, I hate to use the word compliance, but, compliance with the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation and reconstruction, et cetera. And so that can be done by someone other than a licensed architect. And we do have qualified architectural historians and other people that have reviewed many, many, many tax credit projects in the past. Now, is it beneficial to have a licensed architect? Absolutely, but I would really hate for, anyone either, informally or formally to suggest that, DHR can't do a good job with this because we don't have an architect. That actually is not true. We can continue to do exactly what we need to do. However, Rick and Kathleen, you're absolutely right. We can't give the same kind of professional level technical architectural advice that we could, obviously, if we had a licensed architect. But I would hate for anyone to think that we can't accomplish our mission or do our job, because that is absolutely not true. All of that work continues to get done, and we do it at a high level of professionalism and quality, but it would certainly be more robust, as we all know, if that professional architect position is filled.
Right, and I think the kind of tone that we should take right now is wringing our hands, that we're very worried, and that you can handle it, but we'll work out the strategy. But I think hand wringing is always good, and it's a nice way to get a ball moving that isn't threatening. That, yep, you're able to take care of business and it, but on the other hand, it's a real hole that you need to fill and you just can't. So, all right. Anything else on this subject? Okay, thank you very much. I think we've identified our next issue. So now next on our agenda are committee reports, and Kathy Miar, you're up first on the Bureau of Archaeological Research.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can't begin to relay the excitement of our archaeologists to get 3 new vehicles and a boat. It's just not having to say a little prayer or do some other rituals to try and ensure that it doesn't break down while you're towing a boat or a trailer in the middle of nowhere, and all of which happens pretty frequently. So that's really great news. And also potentially getting our collections facility expanded is just amazing. And I can't thank the Secretary of State enough for her support with that. We've been at a space crisis for a while now, and it's sorely needed. I'm not going to take up too much time because I'm going to just highlight some of projects and programs. In particular, I wanted to highlight, since we're not going to have another meeting before March, Archaeology Month and some of the projects and exhibits and events that we're planning on doing with the Bureau here for that month that's coming up. But first, as you may know, or some of you, I'm not sure if you know this about, part of my duties as the state archaeologist is I have to respond to human remains cases that are greater than 75 years deceased throughout the state, whether that's on private lands or state lands. And it's been pretty much going up almost every single year with the amount of new cases that I get, and that doesn't include older cases that last for years depending on certain projects. But at the close of 2021, we had responded to 85 new human remains cases throughout Florida under Florida Statute 872. Already this year, we've responded to 11 new cases this calendar year. And then we've also been working really closely with tribal nations regarding NAGPRA repatriation cases. So if human remains end up coming to our facility for various reasons and have to be accessioned into our collections, they have to go through the federal compliance process of NAGPRA. And we work closely with the federal tribes to repatriate and assess those cases. So kind of getting into March. So March is Florida Archaeology Month, if you didn't know. And so we have some events planned throughout the month. Our goal is to introduce the public to our Bureau and explain the goals and responsibilities of what we do, encourage the public to interact with us and our staff archaeologists, ask questions if they'd like more information about archaeological sites in Florida, and really just showcase how professional archaeology is conducted and educate the importance of preserving Florida's archaeological sites. And so some ways we've brainstormed to do that, we've been setting up events, is our archaeologists are going to excavate some excavation units both here at the B. Calvin Jones Center for Archaeology, which is where Governor Martin House property is, where our public lands archaeology offices, my office, and the underwater offices are. It has a DeSoto winter encampment site located here, as well as Anhika pre-contact site. We're also going to be doing some excavation units at Mission San Luis. One of the units we're going to open up, and Tim had mentioned this before, we have that wonderful carriage house. We're going to try and locate and uncover the footprint of the old smokehouse that's depicted in some of the old photos here. And then there's going to be a second unit opened up the rear of the property where they found some Fort Walton potsherds and also an Adorno piece were found eroding out of a small escarpment. And that's also going to give us the opportunity, because people mostly know our property as the DeSoto winter encampment site, but they don't really know much about the period called Anhika, which really was the capital of the Appalachia during the early period of Spanish colonization. So it gives us an opportunity to really highlight the different, cake layers of archaeology really that we have here on the property, including also the Governor Martin House and its time period during World War II and various other periods. And at Mission San Luis, what we're going to be opening up is based on some GPR, which is ground penetrating radar data that we had done a survey with. There's evidence to suggest location of an intact sediment of what's called the El Camino Real, which is the name the Spanish gave to a trail that they cleared in the 1680s, mostly over traditional Native American trails from St. Augustine westward to the Spanish missions in North Florida. So all of these are going to be open to the public, allowing the public to see what we do and to engage the public in a way that usually they don't normally get to see archaeology done in real time. So we're pretty excited about that. And that's all going to be happening throughout the month of March. Some other things. So our BAR staff have been conducting essential travel throughout the state, including state land surveys and Florida Forever property assessments, human remains case response and damage assessments. In fact, some of our staff in the public lands archaeology program just conducted a site damage assessment, which benefits the state. You do these site damage assessments to calculate the amount of restitution that the state may get requesting for damage on archaeological sites on that property if they were looted and damaged. And this is probably one of the biggest, most extensive looting cases our archaeologists have ever seen. There were an individual actually rented an earth mover to dig at this site and dug 3 school bus size holes on state lands. And so there's multiple levels of investigation happening, not just at ours, but it's pretty extensive. So, which is another reason why public land, public programs and Archaeology Month are important, just to really get education and information out to the public. And then our underwater program, the big grant that we got for the 5-year was finally signed and is ready to go. Unfortunately, are kind of short-staffed right now from people accepting positions elsewhere and leaving. And so we're going to try to re-staff up as soon as we can so that we can start work on those grants. And in the realm of collections and conservation, so our staff there has done an amazing job. They've completed 100% human remains audit. Again, coming back to human remains, we're unique in that we're the repository for human remains that are greater than 75 years deceased that are not of medical legal significance. So I work very closely with medical examiners, law enforcement officers, archaeologists to make determinations about the antiquity of human remains and their particular situation. And while we always try to leave them where they are and preserve in place, sometimes that's just not the case. And sometimes remains have already been dug up in the 50s or 60s and were in somebody's box in a closet, and they end up coming here and we have to determine their disposition, their final disposition. But with that being said, we tend to get an influx of human remains in our institution versus universities and others don't. They usually have an inverse collections of human remains. So we work very closely with different tribal nations, different groups, or I myself am an osteologist to help make determinations of what's going on with those remains. So it was really crucial to do 100% human remains audit to ensure locations and archives are accurate on our end. And then we're also currently working in conjunction with Florida State University and UF, namely in a lot of the Southeastern tribal nations, to ensure that a lot of these legacy collections that were excavated in the 50s, 60s, that may have been split over time for various reasons between our institutions are now reunited, so that when tribes are trying to consult, they can just consult in one place, that all those collections are in one place. So we've been working really closely with those groups too. And I think that's some of the highlights for right now.
Thank you, Katie. One quick question. Where is that site where they're using earth, they use earth movers to excavate?
I was intentionally vague on that, Judy, because it's an open investigation. It is in the panhandle, but yeah.
I'm glad you're on it.
Yes. Oh my God, it is. They showed me the pictures and I just couldn't believe. I don't even know what these people were looking for. It's crazy.
Well, keep on it. Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Yes, I have a question. The El Camino Real activity for March, could you just briefly go over that again?
Sure. So that's going to be here at our Mission San Luis property. So they believe, so based on our GPR data, they believe they found an intact segment of the El Camino Real, which is exciting. And so we're going to open a unit to test those ground penetrating radar signals that we're finding, and see if this truly is part of that trail. And so that's going to be on the 25th and 26th. So if you're in town, it would be wonderful if any of you guys can come. And we're also going to have Jerry Lee out there, who's our mission archaeologist, and he's also going to be doing tours and talking with people. And it's going to be a really great way to interact with the public and see archaeology in real time.
That sounds great. The lecture that I was going to give in November in Spain has been postponed to April. So I definitely want to see if I can get up to Tallahassee and take a look at this beforehand.
That would be great. Yes, please just get in touch with me and we'll work something out.
I would love to see that. Hopefully I can make it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
I guess this is Michael Francis speaking. Just one other thing on that topic. Do you have any promotional material you might be able to send to the board that we could then share with colleagues and students and social media outlets?
Yes, we're currently working on that right now with our communications department and to get everything approved.
Great.
We're ahead of the game right now, luckily, with that kind of stuff. So as soon as I get that, I will send that out your way.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Katie. Keep up the good work. Now we have the Bureau of Historic Preservation update. I know that Alyssa Lotain is not here. And Sarah, who is going to speak for that?
Tim.
Y'all get to listen to me again. Aren't you excited?
Oh, no.
I will try to keep it brief, but there's been a lot going on in the Bureau of Historic Preservation. Alyssa and her staff have done a great job. First, relevant to one of the bills that's proceeding in the legislature. Of course, the Florida Master Site File and the Florida Public Archaeology Network have partnered on the cemetery initiative, essentially an inventory that was rolled out near the beginning of the Task Force on African American Cemeteries. To date, the Site File and FPAN have received 24 reports of historic cemeteries from the public, some of which were previously recorded, but many of which were not. So the way that this works is once those forms come in, we work with FPAN, particularly at those cemeteries that are on private property, since the state of Florida can't, just saunter on to someone's private property. Of course, neither can they, but they can ask permission easier than we can. FPAN will go out and essentially ground truth the cemetery, make sure it's there, provide any additional information, and then crucially, that is then listed in the Florida Master Site File, which was identified as one of the main goals for the state from the Cemetery Task Force. So we're going to keep, along with FPAN, promoting this cemetery inventory initiative. It's one of the things that has the potential to really have an impact on ensuring that these, sensitive and endangered cemeteries are recorded and recognized and preserved, particularly, from our standpoint when there's development, because all too often we hear about these cemeteries when a bulldozer starts its engine and starts running over gravestones. So this is really a great initiative, and our folks in the Bureau of Historic Preservation, the Florida Master Site File, and the Florida Public Archaeology Network have really jumped into it, and I hope it continues to grow. Most programs like this kind of start slow at a crawl and then kind of blossom, and so I'm really hopeful, particularly if we do end up moving forward with the Office of Historic Cemeteries with the support of the legislature, that this will continue to grow and that more people will report the existence of these cemeteries so they can be preserved. In compliance and review, some of you will be very happy to know we did fill the position, the Deputy SHPO position, for the Supervisor of Compliance and Review. That was Jason Aldridge's position after it was mine, actually, many years ago. And now Kelly Chase has rejoined DHR. She took a little side adventure over to DEP for a few years, where she worked on Native American consultation and permitting with regard to cultural resources over with our colleagues in the Department of Environmental Protection. So finally, after quite some time, compliance and review is nearly fully staffed, which our colleagues in the private sector who rely on those folks to review their permit applications and their reports will be very, 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 very glad to hear. And when Marian Almy was on the Historical Commission, she always wanted updates on the staffing at compliance and review, because it's so critical for our private sector partners. And to demonstrate how crucial that is, we received more than 750 project review requests just in January. So it's going to be another extremely busy year for Section 106 of the National Historic Preservation Act reviews, as well as Chapter 267 environmental and historical reviews, not to mention all of the other ways that compliance and review helps with grants, interfacing with BAR on state lands projects, and so on. So I'm very happy to say that, kind of referring back to one of my previous comments in my update, that we've been successful in filling most of those positions. National Register of Historic Places, first thank you to the National Register Review Board members who participated in our meeting yesterday. It was not a super extensive agenda. There were 4 properties that were reviewed, but they were all very interesting and all reviewed favorably. Will be forwarded to the National Park Service. Additionally, all of the nominations from the previous National Register meeting last November have been listed, except for one, which is one of my favorites actually, and that's the Hampton House nomination. We've been asked by the National Park Service to make a few small revisions and revise it and send it back which Ruben and his staff are in the process of doing, and then it'll be listed soon after that. So it's a temporary holdup. We've been providing some CLG trainings now that things have gotten rolling again, since we're able to travel, and places are once again asking for trainings and that sort of thing, following sort of the worst parts of the pandemic. We currently we're busy. We currently have 80 certified local governments. That places us in the top 5 in the nation. So there are a few states with more, but not many. So we've got a very, very active certified local government program, and we just received another application for the certified local government program from Winter Garden. So we may have 81 by midway through 2022. By comparison, back in 2012 or so, I think we had 64 or 66. So we've increased the size of the program by over 30% in the last 10 years. We also may be receiving a couple more applications from over on the East Coast, but that's yet to be seen. So they're talking about it, but not entirely sure. There was a very successful Main Street Day at the Capitol on January 18th that, of course, coincided with the arrival of the legislators. In addition to all the Main Street communities participating, we also welcomed all the Orlando Main Streets, which operates independently. That has 11 districts to join us. Secretary of State Lee welcomed the group up on the 22nd floor of the Capitol. Not unlike what the Historical Commission and the Coalition have been doing. They had meetings with their legislative delegations. They set up information tables and had a very successful day. I went over there for a while, and it was really nice to touch base with a lot of our Main Street colleagues and see how they're interacting with their legislators. Just something to put on your calendars. The Main Street quarterly meeting will take place in Leesburg on March 7th and 8th. But something that I think more of you might be interested in is we're gearing up already for the Preservation on Main Street Conference. This will be our 3rd year presenting this conference as a cooperative partnership with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. That's going to be July 27th through 30 in DeLand. There'll be events on DeLand Main Street and at Stetson University. I really hope, hopefully, I think I said this time last year too, but I really hope by July most of this COVID stuff is behind us. It would be wonderful if that was true finally halfway through 2022. And it would be great to have a nice presence in DeLand for this meeting, because DeLand is, of course, one of our oldest and most successful Main Street communities. And so I'm going to try to keep that on everyone's radar, because it's poised to be a really good, successful conference. I mentioned earlier that we have a new employee in architectural services. Her name is Dr. Kira Lucas. She is filling the Historic Preservationist 2 position that we previously had filled, but that individual moved on to another position. She's highly qualified. She's very, very smart. She's going to be reviewing the federal tax credit applications and assisting grant staff in reviewing project work. She's also going to cross-train on compliance reviews, much like all of our architects have in the past, and architectural historians. She received her PhD in Historic Preservation from the University of Florida, and she served on the Gainesville Historic Preservation Review Board until moving to Tallahassee. So we're really excited to have her, and I think she's going to have a successful career here at DHR. Just kind of a hurricane recovery update on the hurricane recovery grant we received from the National Park Service and how we're utilizing those funds. We've contracted for countywide surveys in 7 panhandle counties. Rick, I know you were a number of folks, but I remember you and particularly us having conversations about this, talking about the need for this kind of work after Hurricane Michael. So there'll be 7 countywide surveys in panhandle counties that were affected by Hurricane Michael. Public meetings are required as a condition of this grant to us from the National Park Service. So we're going to be doing 1 in-person meeting and 1 virtual meeting in each county. So these counties are Gadsden County, Calhoun, Gulf, Liberty, Jackson, Wakulla, and Franklin. So we're excited about that. That's been something that, especially since Hurricane Michael in that part of the state, has been, sorely needed. And Rick, I remember you were on one of the work groups at the Florida Trust meeting that was in Pensacola a few years ago, and this was a huge topic of discussion. And Like
Yeah.
all money that comes from the National Park Service, it takes a few years to get through the planning process and get the money spent, but I'm really excited that we're able to move forward with these surveys.
Great
So that
news.
concludes BHP report, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
Yes, you stole Kyra from us, so I'm sure she's going to work out great for you.
I haven't had a chance to get to know her too well yet, but, I've talked with her a few times, and I'm real happy she's here. She seems great. So I'm sorry, Kathleen, but I'm also not sorry. I'm glad we have her.
You have a lot going on.
Yes.
Incredible.
Thank you, Tim. I
It's a
appreciate
lot.
you stepping in. Okay, next we have the grants program update by Angela Tomlinson.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I was going to speak a little about the budget, but I think we did most of that conversation at the top of the meeting. The Senate has fully funded the special category list, and we're waiting on the House. We submitted, just as a reminder, 77 projects that total a little over 21 million. So the Senate appropriation of 23 million is a little higher than that, so it may include member projects. Not sure at this point. Also, don't forget small matching. It looks like the governor's budget included full funding, and the House included full. I'm not sure. I don't have that list in front of me. I think the Senate and House both include full funding with one line item. So it looks like that will probably be fully funded as well. The small matching list was 46 projects that totaled $1.6 million. So those usually do get fully funded or almost fully funded, so that's not unexpected. And I'll mention, also mentioned earlier as well, our African American Cultural and Historical Grant Program. That has kept our grant staff extremely busy in the last 2 to 3 months. The application cycle closed on November 30th for that, and we received 157 applications. We are sharing duties on that program because that program came to the department, not any specific division. So both DHR and the Division of Arts and Culture are reviewing those projects, and when they're funded, we'll, depending on the scope of work, whether it's more cultural or more historical, we'll share grant management responsibilities. But the applications, again, they came in November 30th, so pretty much the entire month of December was staff devoted in both divisions on that project, reviewing the applications for eligibility, non-compliance items like we do for special category, and generated staff reviews like we do for special category as well. Those staff reviews and the eligible applications were released to the panel that's reviewing that on January 14th. So they've had them for a couple of weeks, but I feel like it's crunch time now. It's 2 more weeks before the meeting, which is scheduled for February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Given the number of applications, we only had a few drop out as ineligible. So thank you, panelists who are here. Steve Bertman, Rick Gonzalez, and Kathleen Kaufman are representing the FHC on that panel for that heavy list. I feel for you because we had to read them all as well. But I mean, it's a really good program. We're excited about it. It's going to do a lot of good around the state. And just the number of applications we received shows you how excited people were for this opportunity. The total funding that is in the current fiscal year budget is up to $30 million. We received a total request for all of those applications for just under $80 million. So the vast majority of that will probably, those applications will not be funded, it seems like, unless we get additional funding from the legislature, which could happen. The meeting, again, February 22nd through 24th, it is in person at the RA Gray Auditorium, but also there's a virtual option, so anyone could participate in that virtually if they wanted to, just to join in and see some of the proceedings on that. And it will be chaired by Sandy Shaughnessy, the Director of the Division of Arts and Culture, not Tim. So Cultural is running that meeting more so than we are, but we're looking forward to it, and we're anxious to see what gets funded, what projects get funded from that program. And then lastly, going back to special category and our programming, grants programming, just wanted to give you the grant cycle update and timeline. So the cycle every year opens on April 1st. So the upcoming cycle will be for fiscal 24 grant projects. Opens April 1st and closes on June 1st as usual. And we targeted the dates for special categories. So I want everyone to put this on their calendar or let us know if you can't do it. It's actually the same dates as last year for the public meeting, September 28th and 29th. That's a Wednesday and a Thursday. So if anyone sees a conflict with those days, let Sarah know, and we can adjust, ideally within that week. That's the week of September 26th. So that's usually when we try to aim for the special category meeting at the end of September to give staff time to review all the applications for small matching. That meeting will be held in August, and then be able to also review all the special category and release those to you for review a month ahead of time. So again, September 28th and 29th are what we have targeted. So let us know if that's a conflict for anyone.
Angie?
And, yes.
I'm sorry. Let me know when I can ask a question.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say that's pretty much the main highlights I wanted to hit. We're just waiting on the budget for this current list, and looking forward to opening our normal cycle and getting through the application review for African American grants. So, questions?
Yeah, I was really more of a comment. I was hoping that you could go and possibly talk to someone in IT at the Secretary's office and see if you can increase the bandwidth speed for the system, because it is running very slow, and it takes a while to just get through opening attachments now. And I don't know if that
actually was that was actually done. You're not the first panelist we've heard from. I believe Rick also contacted us early this week, and some other panelists. So IT, my understanding is that I think either Tuesday or Wednesday night, they rebooted the system to try and update the speed, and hopefully that works. But let us know if it didn't, and we'll continue to push them. But they are definitely aware of the problem, and also how important it is that it be improved. Believe me, we've stressed that to them.
I appreciate it, because it is literally, I have to plan for each grant. So I'll open all the attachments and then go to another one and then wait for everything to kind of load.
I think if I remember correctly, I saw some of the emails come through back and forth. It sounds like the problem that they identified, which they've tried to work on and will continue to work on, is the platform specifically for that grant panel. So it's not really a system-wide issue. It's that specific grant panel. So they've done something already, but if it continues to be a problem, reach out to me or Eric Case or Terry Epstein at Cultural, because we're working with IT already on that.
Yeah, I mean, if I were you, I would go get a hammer and hit something.
I feel your pain.
Cliff.
Yes, thank you, Judy. I did have a question. You said special category grants meeting date was September 28th, 29th, and then you said it was a Thursday, Friday. My calendar lists that as a Wednesday, Thursday. Is the...
Oh, no, if I said that, I misspoke. It is Wednesday, Thursday. You're correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Sarah, Angela? Okay, thank you, Angela. Appreciate that very much. And so now we move on to dates for upcoming meetings, since we kind of led into that anyway. And Sarah, remind us all what it is.
Okay, so Ruben let me know that there was some adjustment to the National Register meetings that were decided on yesterday at the meeting. So as you know, we like to do the FHC business meetings the Friday after the National Register meeting. So this is going to adjust the dates I had previously given you for the rest of the year. So for the rest of 2022, we have a National Register meeting on May 19th. That's a Thursday. And then the FHC meeting will be on May 20th. Then for August, it'll be August 4th and 5th. And then the last meeting will be National Register November 10th and FHC November 11th. So it's the May and November meetings that have changed dates. The August meeting is still the same.
Good. Is everybody okay with that? Cliff? Unmute.
Yeah, I have a question. If you just said the November meeting was the 10th and 11th of November, I have November 11th is Veterans Day. It's a holiday.
Oh, yeah.
Sounds like we're gonna have to circle back on that with Ruben, and then we'll have to get back to everybody. I think that detail might have gotten overlooked. Sorry, everyone.
Okay, I won't change my calendar yet. I'll wait.
I think it would be helpful, if I may, Judy, to ask Sarah to, when they get all of these dates ironed out, to send us an email about that, so we right away, not wait for the next meeting, but send it
Right.
out.
Right.
Thank
I
you.
agree. Sarah, you good with that?
Yes.
Good. Yeah, I've made several requests just personally like that. I think it would help all of us to do that. To have that. All right, okay. Any other questions about upcoming meetings? Okay, so now we're going to go to other business. Anybody got any other business? We've had a lot of business. All right. Is there anyone from the public out there that would like to make a comment or has a concern? Hearing none, we'll move on, and I guess we're going to adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Is there, I don't think we need a second. Everybody,
No.
I'll be happy to second.
Yeah, that's always an easy second to get. All in favor, please say aye, and we will adjourn.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, everybody, for a couple hours of your morning. I appreciate it. We did some good business. Thank you, Tim and your crew, Sarah and your crew, and we will see you next time.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.